My name is Devin, and this is the Book Tender. Today, we are discussing What Fury Brings by Trisha Levenseller. Very much a not feminist romantasy, as some people online have referred to it. Thankfully, the author herself has said this is not a feminist romantasy, and I'm very glad that she said that because it's certainly not. I'm dreading it already. I made myself a gin and tonic, but I'm just going to use a cherry Coke. They're both carbonated. They both have sugar in them. They both derive a lot of their flavor originally from roots and barks and stuff. It's not as bad as I thought. But it's not good. Turns out that when you just kind of swap something out, one thing for another, it doesn't always work as perfectly as perhaps you thought, Trisha. There's a shortage of men in the kingdom of Amara. After a failed rebellion against the matriarchy, most noblemen in the country are dead. Now the women of Amara must obtain their husbands, should they want one, by kidnapping them from other kingdoms. Ulara, a warrior princess vying for the throne, is determined to prove her worth by kidnapping a husband, and not just any husband. To outmaneuver her treacherous cousin, she needs the best. Fortunately, the second-born prince of their greatest enemy is widely known for both his looks and his sweet, docile temperament. He's the perfect choice to secure her claim to the throne. Pause, because there's still more on here. I really hate when books talk about people like they are horses or dogs. So already not loving that. Sanos, heir to the kingdom of Brutus, has nothing but contempt for the idea of a society run by women. Trained from birth to fight, lead, and follow in his overbearing father's footsteps, his path has always been set, until he takes his younger brother's place in a drunken prank and finds himself kidnapped, carted off to the Amaran palace, and informed that he is to become the husband of Queen Potential Alara. Sanos needs to escape before anyone learns his real identity. But the more he gets to know his captor, the less sure he is of what he truly wants. That's actually the first time I've read the synopsis, the back copy, or I guess interior copy. But what I knew first about this book was the whole kind of gender swap element. And then, of course, I saw the video of the one creator, Willow, who started off by insulting romantasy girlies en masse by saying they're not the brightest sparks, and then went on to really, really highly laud this book and specifically call it feminist romantasy, and it's not feminist. Let's just get that out of the way right now. This is not a feminist book. I am not an expert in feminism by any means. However, I would strongly consider myself a very outspoken feminist. In my day-to-day life, I'm not married. I don't have any human children. I am a professional. I've been working in the same career for 10 years. I am very committed to it. It is the dominant part of my life by far. I work in a very, very male-dominated industry, and my particular role, I would say, at least 80% men do that particular job. I would say I'm super feminist, and I would also say that I understand a little bit the concepts or the feelings that were described by Trisha Levenseller when I saw she was talking about this book, or there was like quotes about this. I heard this was a standalone, and now that I'm looking at the Goodreads, it says Wrath and Fury #1. Oh no. I hope it's a standalone. I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but I do know that somewhere she had said that this was a book that she worked on. Oh, is it? It's in the fucking front of the book. I'm such a doofus. I'm a doofus. Okay. This book is called What Fury Brings, and it is all about my fury. Every time a man cut me off when I was speaking on a panel at a convention, every time I found out a male author with my same sales numbers was receiving higher advances than me, every time someone made me feel small for having a vagina instead of a penis, every time someone told me my only calling in life should be that of a wife and mother, every time anything at all sexist or misogynistic happened in our world, I worked on this book. It is my fury mixed with my love of the romance genre. It is harsh and it is sexy and it is a happily ever after. I get that. I have had that experience of being demeaned, diminished because of my gender in the workplace frequently. I get that. This is not how I feel when I am demeaned by a man or when I see a man doing better. This is not the type of feelings that I have. And that's why I would say that this is not, a feminist book at all, because feminism at its core is about equality between the genders. And this book is much more kind of revenge inspired, but not a revenge novel either. Or kind of rage, female rage, feminine rage. And more than anything, I feel like it's just a misandristic novel. Misandry being the kind of flip of misogyny, where it is prejudice against men. Active misandry realized in a romance. I was a little bit unsure, and it absolutely was worse than I was imagining, but we'll get into it. Okay, so this book starts with, we begin on a battlefield. It begins with our main character, our female main character, Alara, and she is fighting this great big hulking mountain of a man, and it really goes right in with this extended device with her talking about how this man has such a big sword and he must be compensating for something. Oh, it's not that clever. I mean, I totally get what she's saying, and I get the sentiment. Of course, it's not a hard sentiment to understand. Given the extreme size of the king's sword, Alara felt certain the man was compensating for something. And it's just like, okay, that's the tone that we're setting right off. And then there is like this bizarre comedic tone that I think doesn't work, because this book does not commit to being humorous or funny. It's certainly trying to be commentary, and I personally really like when there's commentary in fantasy. I think it's so interesting. I myself am very inspired by using fantasy as a way to write about, to talk about real life struggles, injustice, unfairness, all of these things, real life problems. I don't know that this was a good representation of that. Alara is the general of the forces of the military for a kingdom called Amara. Amara is a women-led kingdom, and the reason why they're able to go toe-to-toe with this big man, the king of Brutus, who she's fighting against in this battle, is that the women of Amara are blessed by a power, a gift from their goddess, who is called Amara. And basically it gives them the power to physically overpower men. That's very significant, obviously. Turn the table on the whole situation. However, and we know this right away, our girl Alara is not blessed with the power. She doesn't have the power, which initially, for one hot second, I liked that. I liked that our main character was special, but it was because she was not overpowered. It was because she was underpowered. That shit is just pretty much completely thrown out the window almost as soon as everything gets started. It is not important at all that she has the lack of this power, practically speaking. We're supposed to believe that just because she's training, she's going to be better than all of these women who are now even more powerful than men. It's crazy. So she's holding her own against this big ass king of Brutus. His name is Atalius, King Atalius, and he's holding his own against these women. So he is no insignificant fighter. He's also 60, and he's still holding his own against all these women who are supposed to be more powerful physically than men. And then she eventually takes him down by throwing a rock at him and hits him on the head. He comes to, he's strapped to a chair. She's having this antagonistic conversation with him. She goads him on, talking about how she's gonna steal one of his sons and use him basically as a sex servant or potentially partner for her. Because as we know from the inside copy, that's how the women of Amara do it. If they want a husband, they have to go out and steal a husband because they have a shortage of men, because there was an uprising that happened a generation ago, and now there's only one man who is an adult noble left in Amara. The rest of the adult men are commoners, or the noblewomen have to go out and bag a husband. They drop him in the middle of the city, totally naked and strapped to something, so that he's just spread eagle. Everything's on display. We switch into the point of view of Sanos, who is the king's eldest son, his crown prince, who will become the next king, assumedly, of Brutus. Also, the fact that the male kingdom is called Brutus. Also, the fact that the male kingdom's royal family their last name is Laticus. Okay, yes, dude central, USA. Something important to note is that Amara is one kingdom, and that is the only place where women seem to have received this goddess power and are physically stronger than men. In other kingdoms, women are the same level of kind of physical power, just what they have, what we have. So we're in Sanos' point of view. There's a crowd. He's coming from another fighting and leading another war that's going on between Brutus and a different kingdom. And he's like, what's going on? And it turns out there's a crowd of people. There's guards there. There's some of his other brothers. And the king is still just kind of strapped up naked and still currently passed out, but he's coming to. And these people the guards of this country didn't take down their king. The brothers didn't take down their king. The king is horrible. He is a abusive piece of shit bastard who abuses his sons. He beats them regularly. He beats Sanos all the time. He abuses his wife. He, sexually assaults his wife on the regular. He abuses his daughter. He keeps his son Sanos in line by basically saying that if anything ever happened to him, he's got a setup with assassins who will immediately murder his own wife and daughter. He's horrible. He's a horrible man. But even still, for the sake of your kingdom, I think it's not wise to just leave him in the middle of the town square naked, defeated. That's really bad for morale. They're fighting two wars. Just don't do that. Get him down. So they get him down, but it wasn't fast enough. And so, of course, the dad's super pissed at Sanos in particular, even though he was the last person to get there. The rest of the day, Sanos is kind of going with him, waiting on him as he goes about his business, and we're in his kind of POV, so we know that he knows that there's a beating coming, and it does happen at the end of the day. His dad uses a cane. He beats him viciously, and then he makes him and his brother fight immediately after they've been beaten, and Sanos eventually passes out from all the pain. Back to Amara / Alera. Alera's aunt is the queen currently. She's also a lesbian. She is married to a woman, and they have different words for all the gender and sexual identities in this. I'm not going to get into all of them. She has no children, and so the next queen the succession is up for dispute. It is up to be challenged. And right now, the potentials are Crown Princess Alera and her cousin, Princess, or I guess not Crown, Princess Alera and Princess Glenaris. And so Alera is the general in charge of all the soldiers, even though she doesn't do fuck all with that for most of the book. gotta stop saying the F word. And then her cousin is more like a strategist slash in charge of the finances of the country, and she has a strong relationship with the nobles. She's got a close relationship to them. Also, the women in this world have harems, so they might have a husband, but then they also might have tons of other male lovers. And Glenera specifically does have a harem. And Valera is, for some reason, a virgin. Because she's up against her cousin for succession of the throne to be Queen of Amara, she decides she's got to do something big. And so she's going to steal herself a husband, and not just any husband, one of the King of Brutus's sons, because they hate Brutus and they keep fighting and there's skirmishes over this border city. And so she's going to steal one of the sons, but not just any son. She's going to steal the second-born, because the first-born, Sanos, is his crown prince, and to steal him, the heir, would incite a war, and that's not what she's trying to do. So she's going to steal the second-born, who is supposed to love poetry and be kind of a softy boy. And as they so irritatingly refer to it in here, he's got a docile temperament, like he's some kind of dog. Back in Brutus, it's Sanos' birthday. He's out with his bros. They're all drinking. This is the one night a year that Sanos allows himself to be physically intimate with another person, who is always a sex worker at the brothel in Brutus called like Rochelle's or something. And he doesn't allow himself to get physically or like emotionally or romantically close with pretty much anyone, because his father is so horrible that he would use those people to hurt Sanos. It would put those people in danger. And he talks about how when his father was younger, when he was younger, he and his mom went out and his mom got him a puppy, and then they brought it back and his father killed the puppy or made him kill the puppy or something awful. And then when he was just a kid or a teen, he had a really close friend, a guy, who talked about at some point, like another nobleman's kid, who talked about how terrible of a king his father was. And somehow the king found out about that, and then he made Sanos behead his own best friend. So it's just, why do we have to, everything has to be so extreme in some of these books? Oh, it's just like carefully plotting and nuance and slow build is out the window for some of these authors, and they're just like, we're going 0 to 100 miles per hour. Everything is the most intense. That's another thing too. This is like it skirts on being a dark romantasy, but it doesn't go all the way there either. And I think, again, kind of like with the comedic thing, it suffers for not committing to either. It's kind of a silly way of doing it. Anyways, it's his birthday. He goes out. He and his brothers have been drinking. They end up at the brothel. His younger brother, Andrastus, the second son, he has been drinking a lot. So he's like super messed up. And the madam of the brothel comes in and she's like, there's a new girl and she wants Andrastus specifically. And Sanos we're in his point of view, and he's like, man, there's a girl who wants my brother. I'm angry about that. I want what my brother has. And so his brother, he basically like starts to take him upstairs, but he passes out in the hallway. And so Sanos just goes into the room with this new girl. And it's this hooded figure. She's standing there. She's a larger woman. Of course, it's Alara. He's turned on, they're turned on, and they kiss. They have this passionate kiss, and then he feels a prick and in his neck, and it turns out that she drugged him with this toxin that paralyzes his body, but also gets him at full mast. Is that the appropriate term? Fully excited. And so that starts to happen, and she bundles him over her shoulder and then drops him out the window, and she goes in after him. And so it's Alara, and she's officially kidnapped him and taken him into a cart that was waiting. That's the second time in a very short amount of time that she was able to just get into the capital city of Brutus undetected and mess with the royal family. And this time she's not dropping off the king. in his birthday suit, she is taking Thanos out of there. She has officially kidnapped a son, a prince of Brutus, but not the one that she was aiming for. They're on the road back to Amara. There's a couple days. These countries are very close, and that did present a problem logically for me reading it, which is that Amara's right there. Why do these women in Amara, who are now so powerful, why don't they, attack Brutus? Why don't they wage war on Brutus on behalf of all of these people who they seem to understand are being abused, particularly like women and children, because Brutus is much more a traditional patriarchal society of kind of a past medievally inspired time where, women are getting abused, women are getting maritally abused, there's no rights, women have no ownership to land, they can't get divorced, they don't have rights over their own children, that type of thing. It becomes a real issue once Thanos and her are back in Amara. Talks about a whole bunch, but nobody's done anything. And then also, why would women who are in Brutus not constantly, like in droves, go to Amara? It's right there. The way she treats Thanos right away. I mean, she has kidnapped this man. For the fact that they are neighboring kingdoms and this whole stealing a husband is apparently a time-honored tradition, he doesn't seem to know anything about it. And she is so weird about it. She is such a sociopath about this whole thing. Of course, if he's kidnapped and then told, I'm kidnapping you to make you my husband, I'm taking you back, he's going to reject that idea and he's going to fight that idea for a little while. That's just human nature. If that was a woman, she would reject it and fight it as well. And for some reason, Alara acts like he needs to just, it took such a weird tone that I kind of hated, which was like this school marm, teacher, parent scolding their toddler type of vibe, which is kind of like she's so much talk of her telling him that he needs to behave, and it's just, it was like, you will have much to prove when we arrive at Amara, she said. Physically, I think we can say the court will be impressed by you, but your manners need some work. Was she fucking serious? Men are to be seen but not heard unless expressly told otherwise, she continued. You are free to speak to me whenever you wish when we are alone. However, in front of the courtiers, you need to behave. And just how are you going to make me do that? She leaned farther into the blankets on the cart, propping herself up on two elbows. The crisp breeze and the brutish air blew the loose strands of hair back from her face. Women in my kingdom have been kidnapping and breaking men for nearly 500 years. It is an art form that is taught to the nobility. While I don't particularly care for most of the methods, I will do what I must to ingrain some manners in you. And what methods do you intend to use on me? He asked. The most common practice is denying of sexual favors. This book is corny right away in a very deeply uncomfortable way. Like, more sexual trauma is being instilled than anything else. She's going to housebreak him by denying sex. And spoiler alert, that doesn't work at all pretty much immediately. So she turns to other methods pretty goddamn fast. Yeah, her character is weird. Her character is so weird. She is like, again, she reprimands him like he's a child. It's so gross and weird. A lot is made about her physical stature, that she is tall, but she's also like big, physically somewhat imposing, but also it just sounds like she's just got some weight on her, which is nice. I just read another book that was a romantasy, and the amount of conversations about the female main character that talked about how slim she was, and she was slim, her slim body, her slim arms. It was just like, okay, I get it. She's slim. Let's do something else in this. So I guess it's cool, but my thing is, just because she's got a larger stature and she trains, does it really mean that she would be a better warrior and a better soldier, which is said so many times that she's the best warrior. Does that really mean that she would be a better warrior than all of these women who are also training and blessed with magic from a goddess to be strong? No. And yet we're asked to just believe this, and it's a big part of the story, and yet it also sets up so many plot holes. The magic that the women of Amara have cannot be used. It cannot be used against other women, and it also can't be used against the words that they have for people who have a different gender identity, I think either trans men or trans women, I cannot remember, which is cool. God. There's so much talk of these different sexual identities and gender identities that are just part of the Amaran way and culture, that it's totally not, there's no shame around it, there's none of that, which is great. Love to see some representation for that in the fantasy space, in the fantasy romance space. But it becomes a joke almost when it is put side by side, and there are constantly these little reminders of it next to this women-led society that is so backwards and so mind-boggling and doesn't make a lot of sense, and they treat their men truly like slaves. They are slaves. So it was just kind of like, what do you want? Do you want applause for putting, different gender expressions and different sexual identities without any problems? It just felt so contrived when you have it next to this woman-led world that is this woman-led society. It's not a matriarchy. It's a woman-led patriarchy, I guess. It is still very oppressive, weirdly so oppressive to the men. It is, and it's brutal in ways that felt cheap. It felt kind of like a cheap way of making this story. Because it turns out that when you just flip the genders, when you just do a little switcheroo, it doesn't always work. It's not a seamless transition, or it's not a seamless, new expression. Yeah, that's still weird. It's still weird. It's all of that about the different gender identities, about the different sexual identities, sexual orientations, and it was about as organic as the one time during Pride that corporations are outspokenly in support of and totally on board with folks from, the LGBTQ plus communities. It's as organic and natural seeming as that. Oh, there's another element that her mother, who I think is like the queen's, her mother was the current queen's sister. Her mother was murdered by her father, her sire. So I don't know if it was just a husband or a guy in her harem, but her mother was murdered by a man that she was with, that she had chosen. And that's a big deal. And Alara thinks that that's the reason possibly why she doesn't have power from Amara. Santos is still not cooperating. Of course not. Why would he? He's trying to escape. At some point he's tied up and stuff, but at some point on the road he tries to escape, doesn't get very far. Her BFF Idra, that's like it is the commander in her armed forces. She tells her Alara that she needs to be firmer with Santos, that if she can't convince him logically to just give up everything and become a sex slave basically to her, that she should use basically the stick instead of the carrot. Humiliate him, essentially. When they get back to Amara and they're going through the gates, they take his shirt off and they tie him so he's standing up. And another thing that's talked about so much, it's mentioned so many times, is that he's super pale, even though he's a soldier himself. And it's pretty hard, even if you're naturally pale, to remain a very pale soldier. And they take off his shirt and tie him up and basically parade him through. And it's just such a bad note to start this on. If you genuinely wanted, this is where she comes off as such a weird ass sociopath. Of course that's going to make him not happy. That's going to make your relationship with this person worse, harder, because you started at this on this really ugly note by humiliating him in front of everybody. Yeah, there's just this weird friction because Amaran women are so terrible. They treat the men so terribly. It's this bizarro facsimile of our, of a more misogynistic society that is the default for our real world and things in the past, but it is so extreme that it kind of is just, it comes off as almost comical again, but it's not a comedy. And that is especially so when it's the more progressive elements of the society are constantly brought back and like thrown to the forefront of the narrative. But I will say that it's a dual POV that I think made sense, and I also think that the motivations for the two main characters, were well thought out. Her motivation of proving her strength by getting a husband was well enough formed. That was a strong enough motivation for what was going on, even if under more scrutiny, a lot of her motivation, the stuff behind it, kind of falls apart. His motivation to want to get back and leave to protect his family. He's, the protector, self-appointed, of his sister and his mom. That was also pretty strong, obviously, and both stood up well enough. So they're at the palace in Amara, and the world building in this book, by the way, is terrible. It's basically non-existent. I've read a little bit of a different Trisha Levenseller book, The Shadows Between Us, I believe, and similar thing. Not a lot of world building whatsoever. We just kind of are into the story without a lot done as far as establishing our place. It's not an immersive reading experience whatsoever, which I didn't really like for that reason. And also, she in this book had a real problem with doing a lot of tell and very little show. Tons of tell. A lot of the emotional beats would just be like Sandoz felt saddened and also surprised by this development that had happened, and it was causing him to feel confused and conflicted. It was just like, show me that. Don't just tell me that. Makes for a very unsatisfying reading experience. It's hot and it's sunny, and of course that's a problem because he's somehow very pale, but also a warrior and soldier who's ostensibly been out in the sun a lot. They are at this palace, and pretty much immediately she has help from men in this palace who she refers to as eunuchs, because they have elected to cut off their own genitals to serve the noble women of Amara. It's just like, in what society has that flip ever existed? When have women ever sewn themselves shut just to work in a damn royal house? Also, there's a lot of very uncomfortable talk of her about them basically having sex right away. And it's because I guess Amaran society dictates that for man and women to truly be wed, they have to consummate it with doing the act. Why? I thought this was a different kind of society. Why do we have to take that old chestnut over from patriarchal societies? Convenience, I believe. Anytime that you do anything sexual with this person at all, you are assaulting him. He does not want this. He's in a compromised position, but you're assaulting him. He doesn't want this. But she gets him on that track right away. As soon as they get to the palace, she sends him to the eunuchs. They aggressively wash him. Then they, without his permission as well, wax the hair off his chest. And it's an extended scene about how painful it is to get your chest waxed. And it's like, yes, I know, waxing is painful, and we expect women to do it to their, most sensitive areas, and it's wrong, and so we're gonna have these men do it. And it's just like, yep, okay, check it off. Anything a woman does that is wrong, check it off. We're gonna make the men do it. She comes in and she's wearing lingerie. It's so uncomfy in this book. I feel so bad for this guy. That's the thing. This is kind of feminine rage, revengey. When you think about great revenge stories, great feminine rage stories, you start this story with the main character kind of at their low, because you need to feel and empathize with them, the depths of their sorrow, the depths of their despair, because they're going to turn around and they're going to do bad things to other people, and you need to root them on. And that's going to happen if you really feel how they felt at the beginning, and then you take on their desire for revenge yourself. And that creates a really great revenge narrative. That's not what we get here at all. If anything, I felt way worse for Sanos just in this basic kind of concept. He's not a perfect character by any means whatsoever, but just here, it's super fucked up that he got kidnapped. And now this woman is, the first night he is kidnapped, he's chained to a bed, and she's coming in there, into the room, in lingerie, talking about how they will have sex, but she's not going to do it tonight because he doesn't want it. But what she is going to do, she's a box of various shaped items, phalluses, I'll say that, see if that is okay. And apparently that's to stretch her. Remember, she's never done the deed before. She is to stretch because if in Amara, any time a man makes an Amaran woman bleed, he is sentenced to death. What is that? She has to get him excited to see his size at that state so that she can choose the right instrument from her box to work up to. And so she starts to stand there and work on herself. She's having a good time by herself, looking at him, and he does get excited. The writing is all that this is sexy and cute, and this is a romance. This is early stages. And it's just like, that's not what's happening. I can't get over the fact about the bleeding anytime a man makes a woman bleed thing. So like if a man handed a woman in Amara a scroll and she got a paper cut, straight to the gallows with he. What the heck? What? That's so silly. This is not a romance that I'm rooting for. That is for damn sure. So the next morning, she comes back with the guards. He's pretty much chained up for most of this entire book. And they put him in this stupid ass uniform that I guess the men in this society have to wear. That basically consists of a shirt that is down, the opening of the shirt is down to the navel, very J-Lo at the VMA style. One sleeve is cut off on his left arm because the women of Amara claim their men via armbands at the bicep. They wear, these men have to wear like short skirts or short tight leather shorts that show off their butts. And apparently every nobleman Amara in the palace always eats breakfast together in this public room every single morning. She's threatening him to behave, and she now just resorts to threatening to kill him if he does not behave. She's just gonna kill him. Thought that the sex was gonna be the withholding of favors was gonna be enough. She says that she took him because we Amarans value strength, dominance, fighting ability. By taking you, I proved myself. It seems like if it's so common, it's been happening for 500 years, and the people of Brutus the kingdom of Brutus should understand that this is going to happen, and maybe they should be more aware of it, and they should have contingency plans, or they should have tighter security. I mean, these women seem to be popping in and out of their country whenever they damn well please. Finely dressed women were seated all around the table, their men standing behind them or curled up at their feet. The men all had their armbands on full display, the design meant to show which woman had claimed each. Most men wore matching jewelry in other places, earrings, necklaces, nipple clamps, other piercings. They were done up in various amounts of makeup, from kohl-rimmed eyes to glitter in their hair. "Behave," she whispered to him, "and I won't ever have to put another gag on you. It would be a shame anyway. That mouth is too pretty not to have out on full display." It's just like a room full of leaders, warriors, generals, politicians, financiers, countesses, all with their male subservient harem members. Oh, Berto, I don't think that that's going to work in here, puppy. Hold on. It's not dark enough, because even though these concepts are so dark, but there's this weird mismatch where we are witnessing all these kind of bizarro dark concepts, and then the way that we're being told to feel is that it's totally justified, and these women, it totally makes sense. And it creates this really bizarre feeling, just discomfort. Nipple clamps at breakfast? No. We're introduced to the one living nobleman who is a Marin. His name is Daeneryn, and he was able to survive this uprising where they just killed all of the noblemen, which that in and of itself is crazy. This uprising that was also instigated by Glyneris, her evil cousin's father, and Glyneris continues to be an I'm not going to get into it right now. He is alive because apparently he's also the only one who at that time was studying abroad, and so he wasn't murdered. He comes up to Alara because he is desperate to marry her, and he's like pleading with her because obviously she's there with Thanos. It's not too late. Wait, hold on. Let me find a boy voice. It's not too late. You haven't wed him yet. Wed me, Alara. I would be better to you than this ill-tempered man. Keep him for your harem if you must, but I am the best choice for husband, and everyone knows it. Look at how he's fidgeting with those manacles. Alara, I would be honored to wear your chains. I've ached for your onyx on my arm since the day I could perform. Acknowledge that this is insane. Acknowledge that this is a bizarre society. Please, I beg of you. It is so weird that you're going to tell me that it's progressive. What is this place? Ugh, it's so whack. Whack ass. They're in front of everybody. Thanos is resisting at times. She pinches him on the nipple because she's not going to abuse him. She's better than that. He like swings at her because she does this, and then she straight up just punches him in the fucking groin. Cool. If we've seen a gender swapped version of this where a man has kidnapped a woman that he intends to marry, and she is trussed up in a crazy outfit, she's got nipple clamps, she's got manacles on, there's a room full of other women who are also seated on the floor besides the men that they belong to. They have no rights whatsoever. They're being abused in public. They're getting punched and having their nipples twisted, punched in the genitals. If we see that in the rare time that we do, that character who would be doing that would be unequivocally painted as a villain because that's villainous behavior. It's vile behavior. So it's super bizarre to have Alara be painted as a noble character, a hero, to have other characters in the book say, Alara is the best person I know. No, she's not. No, she's not. The chapter ends with Glyneris, the evil cousin, suggesting that they have a fight between her man, Thanos, Alara's new man, Thanos, and one of the men from her harem. And Thanos is like, yeah, I'll do it. And so so it's on. Glyneris went rigid, yelled, ouch, then turned around and struck the man massaging her across the face. He fell down to his knees, but it was hard to tell what was from the force of the blow versus the natural reaction of the whore to go to his knees before her. Forgive me, mistress. I shall, she said, not missing a beat. Tonight after the lash. Yes, mistress. Thank you, mistress. Had he just thanked her for being sentenced to a lashing? We're in Thanos' POV here. You, Glyneris said, pointing to the one on the floor. Finish my massage. The men immediately swapped places, and Alara's cousin took to running her fingers through the hair of the man who had worked at a knot in her back in a way she didn't like. It was not difficult to see that she occasionally pulled his hair hard, just because she could. Thanos didn't want to imagine the kind of torture she made the men withstand in her bedroom. One of my least favorite parts about this entire book, by far, was the character of Glyneris. Again, because Alara herself is being abusive and doing bad things to the character of Thanos, to have villainous characters, and we have two, they need to be the most big, horrible villainous ever, like total caricature of a villain cranked up to 10,000. Are we supposed to really be rooting for a woman who can't recognize that type of brutal treatment is bad and she just says nothing to her cousin? It's the fight between Thanos and one of the men from Glyneris' harem, and it's Aethon, who is this huge guy. He's super tall and buff, and he used to be a warrior in Alara's army. Bad stuff is going to happen to this guy, and Alara's whole perspective is like, well, he chose He made his bed. Aethon and Sanos fight. They're both going to be totally naked and oiled up, covered in oil. He takes off his pants, and it's like every single, the stands are full. Like every single person in the nation has showed up to this fight. Sanos takes off his pants, and people erupt into cheers like a bunch of horny weirdos. The fight begins, and they're all oiled up and blah blah blah, and it's just an opportunity for the author to kind of create like gay panic for Sanos, the character of Sanos. You know, he's losing because he doesn't want to get close enough with his, you know, member out to another dude, and basically Alara calls a pause, and then she's like, you gotta just get closer, and then she also tells him exactly how he can win. They go back, and he's able to win this fight. We now know that Glenaris is going to torture the fighter because he lost. So even that, I don't even know if it was a win. Nothing feels good reading this book, that's for sure. Sanos brings it to the attention of Alara, and she says how he chose to leave my protection and go to her. I can't do anything. Both of these potential queens, these queen potentials, Alara and Glenaris, are horrible decisions, and I feel terrible that one of these two is most likely going to be named the next queen, because they're both terrible people. Glenaris lifts him up by the hair easily, this jacked, massive dude, and she digs her nails into his arm. This is all in public. Digs her nails into his arm so he bleeds. She tugs on his scrotum. She painfully, don't forget, you know, this is all painted as terrible. Alara just punched Sanos in the groin herself a couple pages ago. So birds of a feather with these two. Sanos tries to defend him. He tries to like get in between Glenaris and him, stop it somehow. And Alara doesn't back him up, so nothing happens. That night, because he won, Alara leaves him untied in his antechamber, and then he's like, there's another door, and he's able to go through all of her potential harem rooms, which was like 40 rooms, and get out the other side to try to escape. And of course, Alara is there waiting, because she is the most tactful, masterful strategist of all time. Puppy, are you doing your happy, playful sounds, or are you being a naughty? Do you want to come over here? I'm told that in Brutus, your men force women into all kinds of unwanted marriage situations, often the moment they begin bleeding. Do you not barter and trade your women like cattle, regardless of their desires? How is that any different from what you're doing to men here? He demanded. The difference, Prince, is that the women of Amara became this way to counter the way men were treating them. Your sex started this. The current point, however, is that it's ridiculous for you to be offended by the way you're being treated when your own people practice it. It's just been in your favor until now. Her words struck him deeper than he'd like. You cannot be surprised, then, that his reaction is going to be negative. It's also ridiculous for the book to not then acknowledge that this is so much more a power dynamic thing than it is a sex or gender thing, even though they try to make it sound like that's what it is. Plenty of times, Amarans in the book say, oh, that's just how men are. That's just how brutes are. As soon as these Amaran women, had the ability to have the upper hand, they just did exactly the same oppression and abuse to the men. Anyways, it's just a very shallow take on feminine rage and revenge, and they fight, of course. So they fight, and even though she does not have this power, they're both soldiers, they've both been training every single day, she is able to best him easily. She's able to literally pick him up and throw him over her shoulder, even though she acknowledges that he has 50 pounds of muscle on her. She ultimately distracts him with horniness, and then she wins. And for some reason, he's still horny for her. Next day, she trusses him up again, including nipple clamps attached to manacles. They're on a collar, on a leash that she has a handle for. It's very Princess Leia when she's been enslaved by Jabba, you know? That's absolutely all I was thinking of this whole time. Everything that Lyra is doing, just like Jabba, is about control, objectification, and power dynamic, degradation, things like that. That's all that this book is. She calls him a broken man. She calls him soiled goods. She threatens to kill him, threatens to send, you know, anything that she can, she's going to threaten him with it. But then, of course, While causing him discomfort was her foremost concern today, hurting him never was. She would not be abusive. She was not her cousin. You are being abusive. That's what you're doing. You're being abusive. That's abuse. What you've been doing to him is abuse. Punching him in the groin just because he doesn't move in the direction you want him to move or sit at your feet like a dog, that's abuse. Santos has come to this again, this tea room, breakfast room that every single noblewoman is in every single morning because they all have breakfast and tea together because they don't have any decent relationships because they're treating their partners like absolute shit. All of these women in there are like ogling Xanos as he moves through, literally like clamped with nipple clamps to a neck manacled hands, loving the sight of this. All of the noblewomen are elitist trash. Talking about how it's terrible that Glenaris only has a harem of common men and hasn't married a noble yet. You bitches killed all of the noblemen 1 generation ago. What? How can you expect people to have much option of... not everybody's going to be able to constantly go out and snag a man. Glenaris is there too, of course, with her fighter from yesterday, Aethon, and he's wearing like a contraption around his whole head that doesn't allow him to eat, that very uncomfortably reminded me clearly of a tool that was used for enslaved people in America. And he is also visibly limping, and she is again hurting him, harassing him, and just nobody says a damn word. Nobody says a goddamn word. If these people were doing this to dogs, if these people were doing this to their animals, their horses, their children, people would say something. It's such disgusting treatment of another living thing. And all of these women are just like, that's how we roll. This man is limping. Aethon is limping visibly. Glenaris makes him get on his hands and knees while she sits on him, even though he's hurt. And she's just torturing this man in front of everybody, and nobody says a damn thing, but Santos is the only person who's disturbed. This is not about Glenaris and her man specifically, but it might as well be. Of course he is, Cecilia responded for her. It's healthy for a man to remember that actions have consequences. They're so terribly behaved outside of our borders. The pit builds character. Where are the consequences for somebody like Glenaris? Where are the consequences for any of the women? Glenaris was just strangling that man at the table. She was strangling a man in front of everybody at a table. More bullshit about how great Amara is. There's mental health facilities. They have nobody who's homeless. Again, Santos is they're going through the town, and he's noting these things. Okay, nobody's homeless, but keep going down the road and turn the corner, and they're in a full-on market full of sex slaves, and a man is going down on a woman in front of everybody just outdoors. Alara tells Santos the story of the first queen. The first queen has no name. Alara just says that her name has been lost in time over 500 years. It's kind of like in the ACOTAR books, the fact that the King of Hybern is only ever referred to as the King of Hybern. He has no name. And the fact that Farah's dad also doesn't have a name. It's just like, what? Basically, with the first queen, she was in a terrible relationship. The king was abusive. She'd had 4 daughters. The king wanted more. He was like abusing her. He raped her. She pleaded for her goddess for death. She said, just give me death, and the goddess instead gave her these powers. That story, Alara said, happened 500 years ago, but we remember. You don't remember her name. The women in my country were once treated the way the women in your country are, until our goddess took pity on us. She blessed us to overcome our male oppressors. Instead of making the world a better place, your ancestors flipped it, Santos said. Yes, for that is what fury brings. Imagine that you had an abuser, Alara said. What would you do if they suddenly had no power over you? I'd want revenge, she said. He'd give his father everything he deserved and more. So would I. What will you do? Santos asked. If you are made queen, will you keep things as they are? How long must innocent men suffer for the sins of their fathers? What will you do, she said, turning the question back on him. Let's say I return you to Brutus. When your brother becomes king, will you bother asking him to change laws that have always benefited your sex? Would you have even given a second thought to the way women are treated if you hadn't been brought here? He wanted to argue, to claim he'd be noble, but the truth was he wouldn't have. He saw how helpless his mother and sister were against his father, but it never would have occurred to him to change the laws. You didn't answer my question, Santa said. Will you change things? The first thing I will do, Valera said, is dismantle the evil in this market and free the men in Glenn's harem. She tugged gently on his chain. See, that's just like, these characters, these two main characters are so stupid because they have to have the most basic concepts of morality explained to each other by each other. Santos doesn't know what rape is. He doesn't know that there's a name for that concept. And yet he watches his father do that to his mother all the time. And he totally understands what it is in that context. And then Alara needs it to be explained to her that she shouldn't be doing this to men, that the men in her kingdom should probably have some rights. Imagine if Alara had to do this whole husband heist thing against her will, or if she had reservations. These two characters realized maybe she actually did already understand that what was happening in their kingdom was wrong, and she already had the desire to change, so much so that she didn't even want to take part in this, cruel and insensitive tradition. And they were able to come together as two characters in two different kingdoms that both had massive moral failures in the way that they were being run. And they could both fight and use each other and use their combined strength to help both of their kingdoms in a way that felt real and true and felt actually reflective of the world that we all live in any way, shape, or form. That actually gave you a satisfying end with people that you could root for. That's not what we get. Anyways, they end up at the pit, which she was taking him to punish him, this is just a place where there is a guillotine miniature specifically for men's genitals, and a man is there. He is brought forth because he has raped a girl, and they cut off his member. The point was to show you the ugliest sides of both your gender and mine. Pretty much sums up the entire book. Maybe that's the author's intent. I just don't really know who was asking for this exact book. And I also feel like in doing so, the shared humanity was completely lost. We just completely took that off the table. So I am to be hated and treated like trash because of my preference for women? Lara leaned forward until their knees were touching. She was pleased that he didn't move away from her. Creep. No, if you let me in justice, I would be so good to you. I only wanted to help you understand. To punish you, yes, but more importantly, to help you compare your country to mine and see the world through our eyes. I'm not saying it's right, just that there is a reason for it. Most in my country believe that if we don't dominate men, they will go right back to oppressing us. We must behave this way to protect ourselves. And she talks about how the one thing she wishes that men could understand is empathy, which in the context of this fucking book by that character is rich. In the context of this world, yes, sure, I can see how some people would say that they wish people generally at this point, but certainly a lot of men, wish that they would understand empathy for what women go through specifically. She forces him to get an earring and then gushes over it because she's a pageant mom sometimes. I mean, there's so much like blurred lines between him being her sexual partner, her captive, and then her pet or her child. So how could he blame the Amarans for what they'd done to protect themselves? It hit harder because it was his own sex being hurt. Alara was forcing him to question so much. This is ridiculous that this is a book written for adults. If you had to be this explicit for what you want your readers to think, this is ridiculous. I mean, it's not even just that she's not showing, she's now telling the reader how to think and what to believe. Santos goes to the gym because that's what the men do. Ethan's there and he shoves him and he's like, hey, I don't like that you're standing up for me because I love that I'm in this situation where this woman is abusing me constantly. And she's literally strangling me in front of a room full of people who don't do anything. He goads him into a fight. They fight. And they're really going at it. And Thanos is like really letting it loose because he's frustrated as hell. And somebody comes from behind and like tries to kind of break or stop him or pull him off. And he like, you know, throws them off. And then the whole room goes quiet because it was Glenaris and she fell down in the gym and she scraped her elbow and now he's going to die. Alara says substitution. Apparently they can do that. But female royalty can't be killed. I don't know if this is just in the confines of this one law about this thing, or if this is just a blanket law that no female royalty can be killed. But regardless, Alara is just going to take a beating. And Glenaris, the evil cousin, whips out a pair of brass knuckles that she conveniently had on hand and beats the shit out of Alara. She viciously beats Alara nearly to death. Alara is, she's recovering in Idra's fancy estate, and Thanos is obviously brought there as well. We get to meet Idra's harem, which consists of more than a little bunch of young teenage boys. Gross. But apparently, no, it's because Idra is so good, she took them off the streets so that nobody would mess with them. I thought that we had mental health services and nobody was homeless. But apparently it's not good enough because or maybe it just doesn't help the men. So these young boys, she's going to take them off the streets. And it's their little secret that she actually doesn't touch them. Right. Okay. It doesn't even matter because you, as a high-ranking member of the government and the army, having young teenage boys in your harem publicly is going to justify that choice for other women. So other women are going to do that. At another point in this book, Glenaris, the evil cousin, she's picking a new person for her harem, and it's a 13-year-old boy. And it's implied that she is not going to actually wait until he's of age to initiate him in her ways. And it's just like, oh, God, all of these women are horrible. I thought we were taking care of our people. Thanos can finally talk to Alara and he asks her why she did it, why she why she substituted herself for him. You are mine and no one takes what's mine, especially my fucking cousin. Boo. No thank you. They kind of strike a deal. He's going to pretend to behave and cooperate, and in return she will allow him to go and have his life back after she is made queen, the implication being that he can go back to Brutus if he just plays along. There's this whole obligation that he feels that is going to run through the rest of the book. He owes her a life debt, which is actually not his fault at all. It's entirely because of the relationship that Alara has with her cousin and the fact that she didn't protect him and she put him in the situation where he was able to get roped into almost getting beheaded. But that's not, nope, we just treating this like Thanos owes Alara a life debt. And isn't that the sexiest baseline for a relationship from which a relationship can grow? They go through another stupid carriage ride to parade him through the streets all dressed in his shackles and manacles, and then a bunch of assassins ambush their carriage, and Thanos has the opportunity to go. He has the opportunity to escape. She is, Alara is busy fighting all of these assassins off, and he just doesn't do it. He helps her. He uses the nipple clamps to garrote and kill one of the assassins. So they survive, barely. Of course, the only way that she wants to repay him is through a sexual favor. I don't want any more transactions where sex is concerned, he explained. Never again. Something changed you? You baffling woman. You've ruined me entirely. She looked away so he wouldn't see her grin. Ugh. Why would he feel that way about her? What has she done that's so noble? We get our first official full sex scene. She has him still chained, still with the manacles, but the manacles are kind of like up. The manacles are hanging from the, so his arms are up. And he's like barely, he can't even really stand fully on the ground. And basically she just goes poking around in his back garden. She plays around in there and he has the most jolly time, which does track physiologically. Finally, we get Alara going to work. She is, after all, the top general of the army for Amara, and it's ridiculous. She's just basically sparring with the soldiers and joking around and talking to Idra about the fact that she hasn't really had a full night of intimacy with Sanos slash Andrastus, because again, her father killed her mother, and so she cannot trust herself to undo the shackles on him as for them to be sexy together. Again, this is actually probably, I don't know, it's either the biggest or the second biggest complaint I had about this book, is that the women characters, especially most of the characters, but especially the women characters, they're written so poorly. They're so two-dimensional. They have no life to them. They are just ridiculous, cardboard characters that aren't doing anything for the plot whatsoever. They're not memorable in the least. They have no intrigue, no depth, and it's just like, why couldn't you write some good women characters in this book? Ugh, now we're just meant to believe that Sanos and Alara are legitimately falling in love. She sends him flowers and with a love note, and he's like, I've never gotten a love note before. And it's like, okay, great. Why don't you take off his shackles? No? Kind of feels like the love note then and the flowers are bullshit. A man approaches Sanos when it's just him during one of the days where Alara's off working and he's got free time. And this man says, I was in the same position as you, and I am as happy as a clam. I'm going to find it really, he's older, so I'm going to find an old man voice. Because I was once like you. Are you here to tell me to give up hope now? Accept my lot? Obar crossed his legs at the ankles. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm sure your betrothed is doing that plenty. His eyes shimmered with humor. I just thought you might like to talk to someone who understands, even if you might not like my thoughts on the matter. I love Anadra more than my own life. Oh gods, this man had been brainwashed by the Amarans. Sanos wished he'd never let him approach. I know what you're thinking. You think me mad, swept up by this place. But let me tell you something. I was the second-born son of a nobleman in Diffenker. I had no purpose, no trade, no land or money to inherit. When Anadra took me, I was furious. It took years before I realized that I went from having nothing to everything. She gave me purpose. I wasn't just a second-born son with nothing to do. I became a husband, a father, a friend to many here in the gymnasium. That didn't hit me last time quite as hard. A friend to many here. That's how small this man's life is now. He's just like, I got plenty of friends here at the gymnasium. That is the only place I'm allowed to go to every single day. More important, though, she gave me love. It was a shock to come here, to learn the customs and accept them, but once I did, I was happier than I'd ever been. No purpose? What about living your own life, finding your own passions, just existing with freedom and with autonomy? No purpose? That seems pretty purposeful to me. At one point, the eunuchs kind of like grab him and take him off course, Sanos, and bring him to this closet, and it's Glenaris is there, so she's got the eunuchs in her pocket that are apparently working for Alara, and she asks Sanos to murder Alara for her. She says, if you can do that, she gives him a dagger. If you can do that, I'll free you or whatever. She is such an overt villain. I don't know why you would trust one single word out of her mouth, and I think that that's reflected in Sanos's internal monologue anyways. We have more pages of Sanos going with Alara to her job. It's bring your kidnapped husband to work day, and he is happy there because he's doing what his job is at home, which is what his purpose was when he was at home. He had a job that he liked to do, which was being a soldier or something. And so they're all like sparring. The women they don't like him, but they accept him. Sounds like a great way to spend your days. Apparently, Alara lost a lot of support when she stood up for Sanos and took his punishment from the other nobles. You would think that it's very strong, actually, for somebody to stand up, recognize that they put somebody in this position, and take the punishment. But no, that loses her support with the nobility. The queen tells her that the heir is going to be announced at the anniversary of the goddess gift party. This is an event we've not heard of at all before at this moment, so it doesn't really seem important. And the implication is that she has a really, really low chance right now. Idra weirdly berates Sanos at one point when Alera's not around for not initiating intimacy with her more. Instead of telling Idra all that, he got defensive. That is none of your business. Wrong. Alera is the best person I know, and I make it my business to help her achieve happiness. You are keeping yourself from her. You're making her work harder than she should have to in order to secure the throne. Why? I am stolen, he reminded her. Would you get over that already? It may have been the start of your relationship, but it doesn't have to be the end. You need to treat her better. You have no idea the honor she has bestowed upon you. Shut up. What? Will you get over that already? It's been like a month. Idra reveals in this moment that Alera has publicly announced that they're soulmates, which is she's not going to take any other men in her harem because she totally could do that. And that's just a thing called a soul. Clever. Just switch some vowels around. That's totally cool. Glenaris has a party. Everybody's invited. There's an Amaran dance there. You know, all the men are there. They're like off in a corner thrusting to a beat. There's a dance, and of course, this is the Amaran dance. The Amarans dance with the men starting on their knees. Get on your knees, servant. Oh, Jesus. It's a society full of dom women, but not, that sounds cool. This is not cool. Alera asked Sanos to showcase some kind of talent at this party. Apparently that's super important because the husbands do that en masse. And so Sanos decides he's going to throw daggers. And he specifically throws daggers that he has lit aflame. And he does so in the book by dipping them in ale. That would not work. Ale doesn't have a strong enough alcohol content to actually hold a flame around something like a dagger that's not inherently flammable. You'd have to douse it in something much more flammable than ale. So he's throwing the daggers and people are cheering, and he has one more, and Glenaris is like eating an apple and he throws it and it like the blade hits the apple. And I just want to say Rush Hour 2 did it better. And of course, we've just already gotten to the point where Sanos and Alera are like fully in love. He's looking at her at this party. He wants to kiss her. He's like, she's sitting on his lap. It's the next day, and Glenaris and her guards like break into the room. And Glenaris is like, you get over here, Aethon, giant man. Alera, push him over, because she somehow figured out based off of one little thing that Sanos said that Alera actually doesn't have the goddess's gift, and so she proves it in the room that she doesn't have the gift, and she also reveals to Alera that Sanos is Sanos. He's not Andrastus. Alera has the absolute gall to be mad about that. She turned back to him. You're going back home. Wait, please, he said. I think you've said plenty, and you let me say plenty. All those times when we were drawing closer physically and you'd pull away, I thought you were traumatized in some fashion, that someone had hurt you. No, you were guilty. Guilty when I'd say your brother's name. Bitch, it's your fault that you got the wrong guy. That's your fault. And it's not like you've created a very hospitable environment for him to tell you the truth about things. You basically have just gotten over hating each other. I didn't want to ruin things for you, to take your mind off the succession. And yet, here we are, and I was blindsided. I take responsibility for my own secret, but you ruined everything. Alera turned to the queen. Auntie, please take him away. I don't want to look at him. Oh my God, the melodrama. So they're going to have to ransom him back because it can't come out that she has him. You know, she can't keep him because he's the firstborn son and it'll start a war or whatever. And then this character is introduced, and she's introduced as the woman who's in charge of Alera's personal spy network. So you had a whole personal spy network this whole time, and you couldn't identify who is the correct prince the kingdom over, and in this whole time you haven't been keeping an ear out or an eye out for everything that's happened since he's been abducted by you. You've been keeping, aware of the goings on of your enemy kingdom after you stole one of the king's sons. So the spy network lady does confirm to Alera that Atelius is now marching on the capital city of Amara. It has a name, but it's so insignificant I've never once been able to remember it. Apparently now Sanos wants to stay where he is. Alera lies to the council to cover up what's going on. She tells them that she kidnapped Sanos specifically, intentionally, to teach Atelius' father a lesson because they've been skirmishing over this border city and they've had this ongoing fight between these two kingdoms. the king is approaching. Atelius is approaching. A small section of his army breaks off and kind of goes to the back, and Valera and the queen take this to mean that Glenaris must be conspiring with him. And so they create a plan. They're going to like go send some guards to watch the moment when whoever her person is goes and actually talks to and possibly tries to open up a different gate for the king's, this smaller section of the king's men that are coming around the back. Atelius is at the gates with his army. Sanos is begging to stay for no good reason. Alera is pissed at him, but sort of not. And so she has him. She's like, I've got a plan. We're going to dress you up in a really stupid outfit again, and I'm going to really go for it. So you got to be cool with this. So she's kind of degrading Sanos in front of him, having this little tete-a-tete with Atelius the Dead. And then last minute she decides that she's going to challenge him to a battle to the death, a duel, just her and Atelius. So it's Alera and Atelius battling to the death. And then going into this, I really just wasn't sure if we were supposed to be worried for her or not. At times, you know, she doesn't have the goddess gift, but it doesn't seem to matter. She, even though all the women should be stronger than her and are constantly training alongside her, she's better than all of them. How? Doesn't make sense. I don't know. But even though all of the women are stronger than men, they all have the power to overthrow or overpower men, the Atelius seems to be able to hold his own against a bunch of them, but he's also 60 years old, and this is like medieval times or maybe Roman times, and there's no human growth hormone back then. So how is he able to kind of keep up? A 6-year-old man back then would probably, who has been fighting his whole life, he would be in bad shape physically. He would not be very good. So I don't really know what I'm supposed to feel going into their battle. Just calling him a whore, calling it to his own father, talking about how despite being his son, he really knows how to deliver in the bedroom. Blech. And then of course, so they're fighting, and Alera's taking some shots. You know, he's got his big old sword swinging around, and she gets him to admit during the fight that he and Glenaris conspired together, and there's this whole plan. So the queen is like watching that, everybody's watching it, and she's like, arrest Glenaris. And then Alera pulls out the whip blade, which is just like a little blade, actually. Oh god. It's a blade on a whip. And she uses it, and she dispatches the king really quickly. She takes his own giant sword and beheads him. And you know what? I'll give the author points. That was a nice little bit of bookending. We started with the sword. We kind of end with the sword. King Atelius is dead. And Sanos goes and talks to his brothers, and we're in his POV. And his brothers, of course, are like, I don't know, you were just getting sexed up the whole time. We were so worried about you. And it's just like, this wasn't a cute little game. He was forced to do stuff against his will and then abused and had all of his rights taken away. Are we just forgetting that? Sanos is going to become the new king of Brutus, but he's also good googly eyes in love with Alera. They're going to just combine Brutus and Amara into one kingdom. Sanos becomes the new king of Brutus, but because he's so in love with Alera, and Alera only, he hasn't really made any progress really meaningfully with anybody else in the entire kingdom of Amara, and she's still not yet been named queen. They decide right then and there that they're going to combine Brutus into Amara. So he's just, in one fell swoop, he's just like, I'm going to take away all of the rights from half of the entire population of the kingdom that I am inheriting. There's been indications that maybe Alera would fix these laws that are so one-sided, but nothing explicitly was said. Glenaris is found guilty, naturally, because the queen is right there when her whole plan that she conspired with Atelius to concoct was unraveled. The queen sentences her to a life of house arrest. And then her mother is also brought in because, as the queen says, I think it's the queen, she says something about how she's been at her side, helping her every step of the way. So she definitely knew, and blah, blah, blah. But her mother, since she is not royalty, she is going to die. She is sentenced to death. The queen is also somehow going to take all of their money. Now Shelwyn turned her venomous gaze on Alera. I should have killed you when I had the chance, back when I killed your parents. Alera and the queen both stilled. That's right, Shelwyn said, smug now. I killed your mother and blamed it on your father. Then I killed him before he could give testimony. I cleared the path for Glenaris to take the throne. Alara couldn't move. She wanted to stop the words, but knew she needed to hear the rest of it. You were 4 years old, easy pickings. I only spared you for the love my daughter had for you. But I never should have been swayed by such a trifling thing. You are nothing. The warrior queen of Amara, meaning the current queen, drew her sword for the first time in years. The soldiers cleared her path as she approached a chained Sheilwyn. She was my sister, Queen Lemia shouted, and then she swung. Sheilwyn's head fell from her shoulders and landed at Glenaris' feet. It's just all so melodramatic, and it doesn't hit. It just doesn't hit because none of this was set up for these emotional beats to land. So that's the official end of the book. Oh no, wait, we have another. Alara dressed in her finest armor and tunic. Glenaris would have worn some fancy dress, but Alara was a warrior first, and she would remind all of the nobility of it. Even here, we have to have a takedown of dresses. Come on. She's named Crown Princess, of course. Duh. We all knew that was coming. The queen's still alive, so she's still queen, but Alara is officially Crown Princess, means that she's going to inherit the throne. Poor Amarants. She doesn't seem like a very capable leader, to be honest. We have our final sex scene. It is, of course, eye-roll-inducing, but there is one moment that is important. He nuzzled her. If you come early, I will only make you come twice. Now, please, for the love of all 5 gods, move, woman. What are these 5 gods? We haven't heard anything about 5 gods. We've heard about Amara. And even then, very little. What? You're literally the last chapter. This is the last full page. There is a 1 page left in the whole book, and that's now when you finally mention religion or 5 gods. But going back to religion, something that would actually really intersect with the oppression of women and patriarchal society, and a really big reason why patriarchal societies still exist en masse is because our dominant religions are typically built around single male figures at the top. And we're just not going to talk about that? Come on. It's such a missed opportunity. There is an epilogue, and it is no better. If you thought something cool was going to happen at the end, nope. It is the wedding of Alara and Sanos, your least favorite couple of all of 2025. But it starts with a dream, and the goddess is talking to Alara in her dream. And the goddess says to Alara that she doesn't have her power because she didn't need it. She was strong enough. And she's now more sympathetic to the men the men of this kingdom because of it. Sanos' whole family has been moved to Amara. They have kind of this reunion. She wakes up, the family's there. They all have a little reunion. Again, it is all treated like the most unexpected meet cute of all time. She drugged him. She abducted him. She abused him. She humiliated him. She degraded him. She threatened him with death. She almost got him beheaded because of her. She made him witness another man's mutilation, and on and on and on. Alara smiled politely at all of them. She didn't seem uncomfortable exactly, but like she wasn't sure what to do with herself. When she caught Sanos' gaze, she said, "Sorry, I'm not used to so much family in one room. It's exciting." Ikanos slung an arm around Alara. "It's really easy. Basically, we all pick on Sanos." "Hey," Sanos said. "I think I can manage that," Alara said. "Shall I tell you about the time he wrestled another man naked in front of 1,000 women?" "Alara, dear," Andrasta said, patting the cushion beside him. "You must sit down and tell us everything." "Yes, leave out no details," Canis agreed. "Okay," Sanos said, striding over to her. "I think that's enough family time." "I want to hear the story," Mora pouted. "Don't you have to get ready?" he asked Alara. I mean, it's just what goofy, corny ass sitcom nonsense is this? Why make the content so dark if this is the ending that you wanted it to be? The final end, of course, is that they get married and he decides to wear a skirt and wear makeup and have his ear pierced and all this stuff. Hooray! Love does exist. This was an interesting premise that just failed entirely in execution for me. And I will say, it's clear that this was not her first book. It was paced really well. it moved along quickly. You can get through it pretty fast, and she certainly doesn't dwell in the language. She doesn't overwrite in the sense that she includes very little as far as descriptive detail for me. But she doesn't go purple, so that's something to be said, I guess. But there's no way to get past the fact that Amara is a society that experienced systemic oppression up until 500 years ago. And the only thing that they did once they got the power to change their lot in life was inflict that same abuse on the men in their country immediately, by the sounds of it. The author, by making all of the women in the society inherently villainous because of the way that they operate, had to make the true villains so cartoonish, so broad, not realistic at all, just like the most insane villains of all time. And that's not a fun thing to read about, because it's just like getting hit over the head with a goddamn baseball bat. Villainy. Reading this whole thing, I think, obviously it's not a feminist novel. It's not even really a revenge novel. The best thing I could say is that it's just specifically wanting to call out the fact that there's the alpha hole, the overly dominant men that are popular in the romantasy space. That seems like that is the most intentional choice that was made in this entire book. One of the worst things in my perspective is that this book wrote the female characters, the women characters, so poorly. They're all so two-dimensional. They're not exciting. They're not interesting. They're not going to stick with you. Their dialogue is flat. Their motivations are unclear, except for Alara's, which kind of falls apart under a little bit of scrutiny. Or they're super overt villains that are also not interesting and nobody that I want to hear anything more about. None of these characters feel lived in. They don't feel like they have any interiority. I have no idea where they're going, what they're doing when they're not on page, doing explicitly what the narrative needs them to do. And that's such a wasted opportunity, especially also, like, where's the mention of motherhood? I mean, that's not something that I have done or plan to do, but it's a big part of being a woman. It's part of life. And so in a society that's run by women, certainly there would be conversations around that or depictions of that somehow. But no, we don't get any of that. And again, where's religion's role in this? There's 5 gods. Who are they? How is that affecting the world that we're witnessing? There's just no real exploration of what it means to be a woman in this world. Overall, I don't know, like 2 out of 5 stars maybe. I was gonna give it 3, but throughout this process, I've been just less and less enthusiastic about this whole story. I felt like it was so surface level and uninteresting. And guess what? There's just like the dialogue around gender and the different sexes and the different genders is bloated with bad takes right now. There's no shortage of lazy, surface level, incoherent, misinformed takes that are all bad. So just throwing another one into the mix doesn't feel like it's doing a service to anyone or anything. I guess good for the author, because it seems like that was just something that she needed to do. But I really hope nobody's looking at this and thinking that this is at all representative of like a feminist take on the issue, because it's not. Please, if you're watching this at this point, just drop your recommendations for feminist fantasy or fantasy that's got a feminist edge or something in the comments, because I need to take a break from this and read some better stuff for a little while, because this was just not it. I do not recommend. Highly do not recommend. Not even a fun read either. It's just sort of boring and not something that I would share. This is not the kind of book that I'd be like, you gotta read this. I'd say you definitely don't gotta read this. Anyways, if you are still here, like and subscribe. Do all the things. Would love to hear from you. What book should I do next? I got a couple on my docket, but anybody that's passionate about seeing me cover something, just let me know in the comments. Thanks.